acceleration of already high food, fertilizer and fuel prices has triggered a global crisis that could drive millions more into extreme poverty, magnifying hunger and malnutrition, while threatening to raise the global humanitarian caseload to new highs and erase hard-won development gains.
Food pricing is our number one problem right now as a result of all this perfect storm for 2022. But 2023, it very well will be a food availability problem.
What's the one thing that we all have in common? It's food. We need it, we enjoy it, and it brings us together. But right now, accessing affordable and nutritious food is becoming more and more difficult around the world. We've found ourselves living in a global food crisis.
Millions upon millions of people, in fact, 345 million people today are suffering from hunger at a crisis level.
Since early 2022, we at WFP already warned that this would be a year of unprecedented hunger. The pandemic's economic consequences play a huge part in hunger rising to unprecedented levels. At the same time, climate shocks continue to destroy lives, crops, and livelihoods, and undermine people's ability to feed themselves. Meanwhile, conflict keeps waging war on everyday life. As the biggest driver of hunger, currently 60% of the world's hungry live in areas afflicted by violence. In Ukraine, the war has transformed what was the breadbasket of the world into a major humanitarian aid recipient. Before the war began, Ukraine produced enough food to feed 400 million people per year. But when the war started, Ukraine's food exports all but stopped, trapping corn and wheat inside the country.
You know what is really interesting is that our markets for exporting food are highly concentrated. What that means is that less than 10 countries export 80-90% of total exports of crops like wheat, corn, rice, soybean. So when any shock happens to one of these 10 countries or less, we see a disproportionate effect around the world.
It's likely you're already feeling the impact of the crisis, whether that's seeing higher food prices during your weekly shop or finding limited supplies in the supermarket.
Before the war in Ukraine started, prices of food commodities were already at a 10-year high. Prices of fuel commodities were already at a 7-year high. And now on top of that, because of the war, things were not moving as they were supposed to out of the Black Sea. And this is troublesome, not only for the poor countries, but also for rich countries. Look at the United States, 8.5% inflation, hasn't happened in decades. Look at UK, 10.1%. So if our advanced economies are suffering as they are, what to talk of poor net food and fuel importing countries?
When it comes to the world's most vulnerable, the cost of the global food crisis will be counted in lives lost.
Almost every country in the Middle East and North Africa region have been hard hit by the war in Ukraine. This is a region that's highly dependent on food imports, and especially on the imports of grain from Ukraine and from Russia. 30% and more of the grain that comes to this region comes from Ukraine and Russia because of the geographical proximity. There are many countries in the region who have had a big burden in terms of food prices because of the conflict in Ukraine. To give you an example, a country like Syria, food prices have increased by 37% from February till April, and that's since the onset of the conflict.
Even before the global food crisis, some families were already living on the edge.
ما كانت ظروفنا هيك أبداً. كنت أعمل مكبوس، كنت أعمل زيتون، كانت الأسعار معقولة يعني. الوضع أسوأ لأنه الأسعار كل ما عم ترتفع. يعني ربطة الخبز اللي هي ربطة خبز الشيء الأساسي بالبيت سعرها تغير. هلا كتير شغلات نحن حارمين حالنا منها، مثلا الفواكه ممنوعة تفتحي بالرادي فاضي مصفر. هلا غليجة صغير من المدرسة نتغدى وراحت للمساء ليجي بيو من الشغل لحتى نتعشى. وجبتين بنها.
The global food crisis we're facing is being worsened by the energy crisis and the fertilizer crisis that are also occurring, leaving millions of people at risk of hunger and unable to afford a basic meal.
What we don't want for sure is that today's affordability crisis turns into or becomes tomorrow's availability crisis. What I mean by that is that today, if you have money, you can buy food. But if you don't sort out a few things right now, tomorrow, even if you have money, it won't be enough to buy food. What are those things to sort out? We need to make sure that the next agricultural season is a good one. That requires agricultural inputs, especially fertilizer. And if that doesn't happen, our affordability crisis, which is bad enough as we can see around the world, turns into an availability crisis, meaning that food will be even less affordable for millions upon millions of people around the world. I like to say that when WFP is setting records, that doesn't sound great for the world. In 2020, we assisted about 116 million people. In 2021, we assisted about 128 million people. That's the highest in our 60-year history. And guess what? This year, we're planning to assist between 140 to 150 million people. But in order for that to happen, WFP needs funding because we are voluntarily funded. And two, we always need access. And when we have both of them, we can do the job.
Right now, WFP's response focuses on three key things: providing emergency food and cash assistance and nutrition support to prevent millions from dying of hunger, supporting national social protection systems, and strengthening food systems. It's clear we all need to work together and fast in the face of today's global food crisis.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, welcome to the Health, Wellness, and Lifestyle Program with Linda Dorman and Dr. Donna Christensen. We are so excited to have this conversation today here on the Our TV network. You can also look at us on Roku Live and also listen to us on WSTX Radio, Bloomberg out of the United States Virgin Islands. How are you today, Donna?
I'm doing great. And I know people may be wondering why our health and wellness and lifestyle program is going to be talking about discrimination and against farmers. But when I go to my medical meetings where I met our guest that's coming on with us, people talk about food being medicine. And it's all what we eat, what we put into our bodies is important to our health. It supports good health, or it works against our good health, depending on what it is. So we want to make sure that our farmers are taken care of.
You know, this is a really critical topic, and I don't think people really have grabbed hold of it and therefore can become advocates and a voice of change, and as well as just hold our whole food source accountable to what it is that we know that we need here in the United States, as well as how we do or do not import different food sources. You know, there's a lot of conversation right now around healthy foods. Why do we allow chemicals in our foods in certain places versus in other countries? So, you know, these are all part of the conversations. That's just one little pebble in the beach sand of all the things that we could talk about around food insecurity, food quality, pricing of food, and so economics and so forth. So it's really exciting to have someone very special. You want to introduce him?
Anthony, are we bringing our guest on? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, this is Matt Bowman. Well, the scrolling underneath this at the bottom of the screen says he's an owner of a winery. But more importantly, he is responsible for sharing information about this new program to several states and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. And I happened to meet him at the National Medical Association meeting. And he was telling me about it. And it's interesting, he's been working with Anthony on this project. So we thought we'd bring him on to help inform our farmers about this program for anyone who may have faced discrimination. We had problems back years ago. Some farmers were compensated, some probably not compensated to the level that they should have been. So Matt, welcome to the program.
Dr. Christensen, thank you. And Linda as well. I'm honored to be here. You know, health and wellness is so important. We have this beautiful backdrop, not quite as beautiful as the U.S. Virgin Islands, but it's Florida, but it's beautiful. And such an important topic.
Yes. So tell us about the program. It seems as though the announcement came out just last month about this special program. So can you start to tell us what it is?
Yes, $2.2 billion. The largest financial assistance program in the history of the United States for farmers, ranchers, and landowners who've experienced discrimination in lending. And that is across Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, all 50 states. And one of the things that I would like to share is that there are certain things that are fundamental in life. Food security.
Yeah.
There we go. Sometimes live television and live radio can be a challenge.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about with Matt Bowman, and hopefully we'll bring him back on in just a minute, the dire challenges that our farmers of color have in the United States, getting their fair share of the opportunity, but also their fair share in the pricing. But now we have also, once we get Matt back on the call here, the challenges that we also have with land ownership. So we're not paying attention to who's buying up all this land in the United States of America that is used significantly for farming.
Yes. And we have the problem here as well. Things have been built on farmland. The farmers have kind of, in recent years, really stood up against that happening. So we've been protecting as much as we can our farmland.
And, right before we came on, we did have this entire video, which I thought was extremely informative, from the United Nations, that really looks at this topic from that lens of food insecurities. How do we have a country here in the United States in which we are paying our farmers to actually destroy crops, in order to regulate pricing? It's such a huge conversation that the general public needs to, how do we boil it down to bite-sized bullet points so that there's an understanding, a knowledge transfer, and therefore that we can be that much more responsible and understand, why is the cost of our food going up? Why is the quality changing? What's really happening? So we understand that. Well, Matt,
this is back.
Glad you're back. So you had us on a cliffhanger there just a moment.
Years ago when I was a child, they had these books and it always stopped right at the best part. So I think that's what happened here. So there is $2.2 billion in financial assistance. It's available to any farmer who experienced discrimination in lending. And what does that mean? It means a farmer who, either rancher or landowner, who wanted to farm. They went out to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they applied for a loan, or they wanted to apply for a loan, and they were not able to due to discrimination. There's many different types of discrimination. Race is only one of them, religion, national origin. And the reality is that when you look at the loans that go to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, most of the money goes to a very small percentage of large farmers. So if you're a small farmer, and what does that mean, Matt? A small farmer is anyone with less than 100 acres. So if you have less than 100 acres, you make up the vast majority of farmers, and you get just a tiny sliver of support from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. This congressionally mandated $2.2 billion is an attempt to provide financial assistance. It won't make people whole. If you lost land in the U.S. Virgin Islands, that land could be worth millions of dollars. So financial assistance up to $500,000 will not make you whole. But the intent of this program from the U.S. Department of Agriculture is to have a third-party administrator, in this case, the Windsor Group. We're not part of the government. We are committed to farmers, ranchers, and landowners to help you apply. Now, you have to do it by October 31st, which is what Dr. Christensen and I talked about, Linda. We said October 31st, that's like 10 weeks away.
Yep, that's right. That's right. The e-filing, and it says specifically on the website, 11:59 Pacific time. So if you're East Coast, you get a little bit of a grace period, but let's not have you wait until the 31st of October to get your e-filing done. And they've made it really simple, as you started mentioning how. So before we get too far into the conversation, let's make sure that we give the website where they can actually go and apply.
Yes, and the website is www.22007apply.gov. Again, www.22007apply.gov. And that is where you go. There is a 1-800 number. The 1-800 number is 1-800-721-0970. If those don't work for you, there is a cell phone number. And only because I'm on this broadcast, this is an exclusive. It is 352-234-0411. I am the Region 2 project manager. That number will ring right here and only for your listeners. This is a gift for your listeners.
Wow.
Thank you.
Making us special. Thank you.
We'll repeat all those as well a little bit later on in the program. Are you working closely with the National Black Farmers Association on really getting the word out regarding this funding that's come out from the USDA Farm Loan Program?
So, Linda, that's an excellent question. What U.S. Department of Agriculture did is they picked 7 cooperator farming organizations. They picked the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. They picked the Rural Coalition. They picked FLAG, which is the Farmer Legal Aid Group. And so those are some of the organizations. We are working with a number of Black Farming Association organizations. The Federation of Southern Cooperatives is one. Black Farmers and Agriculturalists of America is another. We are not working directly with the National Black Farmers Association, although I do know that they are very familiar with this program, and they are advising their farmers on how to use it. What we have done is we put offices in 29 states. I'm here in Florida and have been a 5th generation farmer in Florida and South Carolina on the wine side, on the tobacco side, on the poultry side. And so we will be this week with the Congressional Black Caucus Institute in Biloxi. We will be with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives next week in Birmingham. We were with the NAACP last night across Florida. We'll do Texas next. And so we're working with a number of organizations, the National Newspaper Publishers Association we're working with. So the list of partners continues to grow. In every state, what we have done is we've gone hyper local. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, we contacted Mr. Anthony Weeks, and we got trusted agents. I wouldn't call them agents, trusted leaders. That's what they are. They're not agents. They're leaders, trusted leaders who can go out in the communities. In Mississippi, it is ACT and SEED. In Alabama, it is New South Alabama Coalition. And so we really went for the top of the shelf, if you will, in terms of looking for partners.
So, it's interesting when you talk about partners, I think about the responsibility of corporate America, those who are benefiting from and rely on our farmers, because that's where that farming product lands in those retail stores, the Walmarts of the world, the Shoppers, the Publix, the national food chains. Do you have something that you could share with us around how do we as individual consumers, how do we help advocate for the Black farmers? How do we create equity within the Black agricultural space, period?
Yeah. So this discrimination financial assistance program, this $500,000 up to $500,000 will go a long way towards helping farmers bring on operations. You know, farming is one of the interesting businesses. It's one of the few businesses where you put everything in on the front end and hope things come out on the back end. So when you talk about commercial agriculture and agriculture to scale, this initiative will help that. Now, to your specific question, I think that there is a lot to be said for urban farming and small scale farming. When I first retired from the Navy after flying jets for many years, I went into farming for myself. And I went to my local feed store and I was trying to do enough greens to feed a community. And I walked in there and I told the feed store I wanted to do 3 acres of greens, collards, kale, mustards, any kind of microgreen. And he told me, he goes, that'll be $1. I said, no. I need 3 acres. And he goes, yeah, $1. The seeds were $1. I bought $12 because in my mind, I figured he didn't know what he was talking about. And I spent the next 2 years thinning kale, trying to grow these crops. So for less than the price of a meal at McDonald's, you can feed a family for many, many years. That's how abundant seeds in agriculture are. You don't need 10 acres. You don't need 1 acre. You don't even need a half an acre. A quarter of an acre is more food in terms of fruits and vegetables than a family of 3 or 4 can eat.
Wow. And that's interesting because we have a lot of push and movement in our urban communities to create urban farms. So in the state of Maryland, we have a real initiative where instead of necessarily getting your produce, you would belong to a cooperative. And oftentimes those cooperatives, particularly in Prince George's County, are owned by Black individuals, Black farmers. And you're right. So it's great to know that you can carve out a continuum of health, produce, and support this Black agricultural community, as well as ensure that they get an opportunity to play in the game, if you will, economically.
Now,
Okay,
Linda, what if you said,
Go ahead and
what if
answer.
you said that you wanted to make money? You wanted to create a livelihood with farming. There is a book written in the 70s by a Tuskegee University professor, and it was How to Make $100,000 a Year on 20 Acres of Land. And this was in 1970. So can you imagine what you can do in 2023?
Wow. So how much discrimination are you finding? I know the program is relatively young, but years ago, there was so much. And I thought that had been resolved by now. So what are you finding?
Yeah. So what we're finding is that the discrimination that was in agriculture was so deeply ingrained in agriculture and affected so many small farmers, not just Black farmers or Spanish farmers, but all farmers, that $2 billion has been set aside to help remediate that situation. It is not a settlement, it is assistance. So when you look at history from 1946 to 1992, the FMHA, which was the predecessor to the Farm Service Agency, allowed committees of farmers to make decisions. And sometimes when you have humans, when you have people who are given too much power, that power becomes abusive. They pick winners, they pick losers. And so this is a problem USDA has recognized. They disbanded FMHA. They started Farm Service Agency. And that is why when you look at this money, it goes back to the 50s, to the 60s, to the 70s, to the 80s. Okay. So this isn't something that just happened recently. I would argue that it has gotten better, much better. So that is why the cutoff date is January 1st, 2021. There are still, you can always be better. A good institution can always be better. As a third-party contractor from the outside looking in at U.S. Department of Agriculture, there is a lot of discrimination that happened during the 70s and 80s. Yes. The stories are heartbreaking of people coming in and losing their family farms. The number of calls that we get from farmers. I think the picture that I'm going to use that describes this initiative is we have an 83-year-old farming wife, and her husband came into our Alabama office. And she wore a shirt, and across the front of her shirt, it said, grateful. She was grateful that after all these years that someone had decided to come and help her. And the Congress came to set this money to help her. So there are a lot of farmers who are grateful The papers are so faded you can barely read them. So faded can't coming out of barns and out of attics and basements. So that's what we're facing. But a lot of discrimination, Dr. Christensen. Congresswoman, you even as knowledgeable as you are, I think even you would be surprised at the scale and the degree of discrimination that happened.
Yes, well, we had some cases here. We had quite a few discrimination in a number of areas, even in the rural housing area, we had discrimination. But
Yes, ma'am.
is it time for us to take a break and come back, Linda?
It's time for us to take a break, and we're a little over. I was just enthralled with it. So we will be right back on to Health, Wellness, and Lifestyle with Linda Dorman and Dr. Donna Christensen, here on OurTV.network.
You're too damn important to be drinking trash. This is V Plus Energy, one of the healthiest energy drinks in the world. 5 fruits, 5 vegetables, 5 vitamins. The other brands just won't tell you what they put in their drink, and that's scary. V Plus is natural recurring energy with great taste.
ICABA, ICABA, stands for the International Career and Business Alliance. And basically, it's really about building, activating relationships that grow wealth.
What is ACABA doing? ACABA is putting you in an environment where you can rub shoulders, you can actually talk to wealth creators, to entrepreneurs who may look like you, who may come from circumstances like you, who may come from an environment like your environment. And then once you go ahead and grab that baton, you might say, well, this is possible. This individual over here did it, and now I can do it. So ICABA is raising our level of vision, and they're doing a fantastic.
Today we're taking a little vacation on the west end of St. Croix, visiting a seaside restaurant called the Beachside Cafe here at Sandcastles on the Beach.
The atmosphere is just wonderful.
You just feel very welcome when you're here.
Hi! I'd like to introduce Chris and Ted, who are the owners of Beachside Cafe and also Sandcastles on the Beach. This is amazing!
Thank you. Sandcastle on the Beach is quiet and friendly, relaxing.
I often entertain guests, and this is the one place I always try to bring people.
Tell us a little bit about the hotel.
Well, the hotel is a 25-room hotel. We have 10 different room types within that We also have, of course, our greatest asset, the ocean out there, which our side of the island is very calm typically. So it's the best swimming beach and also great for snorkeling.
And just walking, doing a nice walking beach tour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Best beach access is right here, so we love them.
And we're also fortunate we have just up the way Sandy Point National Park, and then Frederickstead Town is just a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really fortunate to be in this perfect spot.
Delicioso, 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 delicioso.
V Plus Energy. With 5 fruits, 5 vegetables, 5 vitamins, you no longer have to sacrifice your health for energy. Drink V Plus. Healthy energy. No sacrifice.
Yes, well, hi, welcome back
We never get back.
I know, we had great
Program.
commercial break, a lot of good stuff, high
Yeah,
energy drinks.
very good, a lot of
and
relating to
beautiful
food.
Caribbean. But we're so happy to be back to talk to Matt Bowman, who is the proprietor of do you pronounce that Micanopy? How is it? I know it's named after the place in Florida, but I just want to give homage to the name correctly.
Sure. So it's Micanopy. Oldest town in Florida.
Micanopy, Florida. So Micanopy Wineries, a 5th generation farmer, Black farmer in the region, and really here to represent a very critical initiative from the USDA in terms of making available somewhere in the neighborhood about $2 billion in funding to $2 billion for Black farmers to level the playing field and to deal with the inequities that we have been seeing for now probably close to 50, 60 years at least. And then before that, I'm kind of curious, Matt, as to how did we actually get here? Did we have the next generation of would-be farmers opt out to sell? Were they intimidated to sell their land to yield for? Were they muscled out? Because we've seen that happen even with a recent story out of South Carolina. A 93-year-old woman is staying firm to not yield to development and the pressures of having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers. So walk us through what happened so we'll understand how to support and advocate where we are now.
So Linda, this initiative is for all small farmers. And in many instances, the Black farmers are the canary in the mine for other Americans. But this initiative, and I can't stress it enough because whenever people hear the word discrimination, they automatically think Black farmers. But this is really for all small farmers. And how we got here as a country is the small farmers, anyone less than 100 acres, was besieged on all sides. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because they were besieged on all sides. They were besieged by this triangle of adversity. You have lending. The loans were not made to small farmers because there were people who decided, for whatever reasons, discriminatory reasons, that certain people should not be farming. And certain big farmers knew what they were doing and should get the assistance. So that's one way that we got here. The second thing is urbanization. As generations, children grew up, many places, South Carolina, Florida, they were taught that the opportunity lies in education, opportunity lies away from agriculture, away from agritourism. That's where the opportunity lies. So people voluntarily left agriculture. And then the third thing that happened is details. Used to be that you could farm, you didn't have to have an LLC, you didn't have to have a partnership. But as society matured over the last 100 years, those details matter. And so whether it's applying for paperwork and crossing all your T's and dotting your I's, whether it is knowing that there's an October 31st deadline for this particular money, farmers who are doing other things, who have other jobs. You saw my son walk in the background. This is that multi-generationalness we talk about.
Yeah.
Have to be specialized to succeed in farming. And so that lack of specialization, I think if there's a triangle, that's it. Urbanization, crush small farms. Then when you look at the lack of specialization, when they ask you, do you have an accountant to do your paperwork? If you're a small farmer, you probably don't. Then if they say, hey, listen, the deadline is October 31st. Why do so many small farmers miss the deadline? It is not true that the small farmers miss the deadline. The small farmers will get their paperwork in around the middle of October. But here's the problem. There are what's called intermediate deadlines. Small businesses miss intermediate deadlines. They see October 31st and they focus on this big target, but they forget all those small deadlines that happen that drive you towards October 31st. September 6th is the last day for anyone who's applying for this money to get their original records for U.S. Department of Agriculture. So what does that mean for the farmers who are thinking, I have till Halloween to apply?
Really, really important.
September 20th, and they're going to find out, hey, wait a minute, I can't get my paperwork. So they're going to wait and wait. Their paperwork will arrive in November. They're going to apply late, and they will be rejected. And history says, this is what history says, we'll have thousands of small farmers who can't do anything right. They turn their paperwork in late. But it's not that they can't do things right. It's that the way that small businesses and people who are doing a lot of things, they only see big deadlines. The little deadlines in the weeds, the fine print, unless there's, dedicated leaders like Congresswoman Christensen, like you, Linda, who are pushing this information out, and they're saying September 6th, September 6th. If you turn your paperwork in on September 6th or September 20th, you don't have to worry about October 31st. If you wait till October, more than likely, you will be calling me on my cell phone, asking me for assistance or an extension, neither of which the assistance I can provide, the extension I cannot.
So let's emphasize something really important, Donna, if you don't mind, because I've had a chance to, in preparation for this program and our conversation, to do a lot of reading, because this is so fascinating to me. I see nowhere on the website, and that is a form of discrimination, of holding and captivating information like that intermittent deadline. So if we could just say by September 6th, they need to apply for their information from USDA, so they'll be able to complete the application for the funding if they've been discriminated against prior to 2021, and they can demonstrate that, I imagine, to at least apply for the 2.2 billion. If they don't have that paperwork and they are not able to apply, they're going to be shut out from this opportunity.
Now, what exactly is the paperwork that they're asking that they need to get?
Yes, ma'am. So all of the interactions between the farmers and the U.S. Department of Agriculture were captured. They were captured at some point, and those records reside with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Now, some people would argue, well, the farmer should also keep a copy of their records. The reality is most people don't keep copies of records beyond 10 years.
Not only that, we have hurricanes and things get damaged, places get damaged, paperwork gets blown away.
Yes, ma'am. And so it is the agencies, not just their responsibility, but they have the access to those original files. And that's why that's so important. And not everyone has a Congresswoman Donna Christensen advocating for them. The listeners here, the citizens in the U.S. Virgin Islands, they do. They're blessed and fortunate, but it's so important for them to get their original documentation. How can you prove discrimination if you don't have it? Now, there is a way. And people will say, well, you can write a narrative and you can have some third-party witnesses that will submit statements, and that will be weighed and that will be evaluated. that is not as strong, in my opinion, as a piece of paper that says, I went in on this day, I was turned away, I filed a complaint, this is my complaint letter. It's in black and white. There's nothing that beats the precision of the English language in writing.
Yes.
And I pointed out to Matt too that on some of the scroll downs, the territories are not even listed, so they need to fix that as well. When you go to look and see who's your state coordinator or where you should go for your information and your location, the territories are not there. Now, this money is grant money?
So this money is financial assistance. So in
it's not a loan.
December or January, people are going to open up that mailbox and there's going to be a check from the national administrator. It won't come from U.S. Department of Agriculture. They're only maintaining oversight. They may check 5% of the checks that go out, but you'll get a check. It'll be a paper check. So whatever address you put in step 1, make sure it's the correct one. There's a 10-step process. Everyone says 40 pages. It's 10 easy steps to do this application. 7 of those steps are administrative. There's only 2 where you actually have to tell your story. Steps 1 through 4 deal with paperwork with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Step 5 is where you talk about the discrimination. And step 6 is where you talk about how did that discrimination affect you financially. Step 7 is if you're a prior civil rights leader and activist, if you think that had something to do with you not getting your loan. Step 8 is what I call the magic step, which is anything that's not captured any place else on the application, feel free to just write to your heart's content. Step 9 is the IRS paperwork. Everyone has to pay the IRS. And then step 10 is I swear or affirm that everything that's written in the previous 9 steps is true. So it's a very easy 10-step process. Yes, it's 40 pages, but those 40 pages go very quickly.
And this is an online application, correct? They're not completing it someplace else. They can go online and use the online version.
So Linda, you hit the most important, well, the second most important piece. Congresswoman Christensen hit the most important piece, which is the information must be available. But you hit the second most important piece. You have 2 ways to file this application. One is by paper and the other is electronically. If you file it by paper, if you make any mistakes on the application, that application is going to get rejected. Any mistakes.
Wow.
You get to sign your name, thrown away. You write, it says last name, then first name. If you write Linda Dorman on step 1, the application gets thrown away. Even though in other parts of the application, you write Dorman Linda, there are, each of the handwritten applications have to be retyped into an electronic database.
Oh.
The person retyping it is not authorized to make any changes whatsoever. So if they type your name, Linda Dorman, in one location and then Dorman Linda, the computer is going to reject it. They're not allowed to do errors and deficiencies and contact you, and you will get a notice for an inaccurate or incomplete application. Now, if you go online and you try that, the computer will self-correct. The AI will correct it for you. And so this is just my opinion, one man's perspective. When you look at the total number of rejections, and you're going to look at the ones that don't even get evaluated, the paper applications have a greater chance to not make it to evaluation than the electronic application.
Right.
And that is why I'm encouraging all of our listeners, electronic. Handwrite it on paper. Come get technical assistance from us so that it's perfect. Then type it in yourself. If you can't type it in yourself because of your age or your skill set, have a niece, have a nephew. You can come to our offices. We will type it in for you at our offices. But I encourage everyone, go electronic.
So that's a good point. Are there navigators that are helping? Are there individuals in different regions that are helping? Or can they pick up the phone and actually dictate the information so that you know very carefully? And who would they, is that magic number for our listeners that you gave us to be able to flood your phone lines? Okay. Let's do that
Yeah,
number.
because there is technical assistance, but how do we get to it?
Yes. So the technical assistance, there is the plain old telephone, the 1-800 number, and we have an option 3, which is booking. You can book for a phone technical assistance consult, and someone will sit with you. A skilled technical assistant will sit with you for the 2 hours it takes, and they will type it in for you. If you say, well, I have a computer, we have a virtual technical assistant. They will get on a Zoom call similar to us, and we'll share a screen and we'll go through and we'll type it for 2 hours. And then last but not least, we have mobile operating teams all across the United States, 83 in my region alone, who will do groups of farmers, ranchers, and landowners, 5 at a time. We will sit with you. We'll walk you step by step. We'll bring laptops. We'll bring the equipment to you so that you can type it in. But we want to make sure that there is every opportunity for everyone, no matter whether there's a digital divide or not, to do the electronic version.
I think that you have opened up the world. There's no reason why technology would be a barrier, given what you've just said. How would someone access? When I think about when I get off of this program, I'd like to call the cooperatives who are small farmers. And I appreciate you indicating that it's really a size discrimination, not a different type of equity, as we already know, in terms of even Black farmers and the double hit. But I want to be able to refer them to this information and any of the ambassadors that are regional folks that are out there to support them with the technology application. So how would they find that information?
Yeah, so what they would do is they would go to www.22007apply.gov. And on that website, there's a number of resources. It says resources and FAQs. Click on the resources and it'll say find your local support. You click on that and it will provide you locations where you can go to. If you're in Puerto Rico, we have an office in Guaynabo outside of San Juan. In U.S. Virgin Islands for Frederickstead, Christiansted, we're using that will come out. And then for the Caribbean, everything is largely run out of my Florida office here in Gainesville. And you can feel free to reach out to the team here and we will get you the support you need. That is our mantra. We have 3 T's: trust, transparency, and technical competence. And that technical competence is probably the most important part.
And something that I really appreciate that's really important because, you know, along with discrimination, we have a lot of folks out there delivering scams. And part of the website information is
talk about
beware of scams. Can you talk a little bit about what to avoid?
Okay, so there are scams that are fraudulent people who are not associated with this program whatsoever and have never turning in your application. They'll charge you a fee to prepare your application and they're going to run away with your money.
Right.
Or they're going to charge you a fee. They're going to put their address, and then when the check comes, they're going to run away with your money.
Oh my goodness.
That is a percentage of scammers. Okay. Or they're going to get you to lie, sign your name, cut them a check and split the money. You get in trouble. They don't because they're nowhere on the application. But that's a small group. Those people are truly scammers. But there's another group of people who are on the internet, who are in communities, who are trying to get farmers, ranchers, and landowners to pay for this technical assistance. Right. I would not classify them as scammers per se. I would classify them as people who are for profit to help you get technical assistance. We are the best option. We are a completely free technical assistance. We are paid by the government to support each and every citizen to get technical assistance. The law firms some of them are charging 33% of your money. Some
Yeah.
of them can reach out. There's nothing that precludes those same law firms from coming to me and saying, hey, fill these forms out for these people. You work for the taxpayers, and then they will collect a third, and there is nothing that I can do about it. I'm obligated to help any and everybody who comes and is authorized to be represented. So
And a lawyer is not required. That's a big point that we want to make.
A lawyer is not required.
Lawyers not required.
Lawyers not required.
There's no reason to pay anyone.
There's
Correct.
no
There's
reason
absolutely
to pay
no
anyone
reason to pay anyone.
at all. None. And depending on your states, if you've already entered an agreement, you can talk to whoever you might have entered into that agreement, explain that you did not know all your options. I'm not giving legal advice because I'm not a lawyer, but I would tell you there's no reason to pay anyone, not 1 cent, for the preparation of these forms. It is the paperwork is September 6th to get your history. You have unlimited amount of technical assistance for free from us. My staff will probably scream when they hear I said we have unlimited amount, but we will get you the assistance that you need.
And just to kind of conclude on the scamming part, or the opportunistic approach that some may take, if they do find themselves in that situation, need to figure out how to come out of it, there is a hotline that the U.S. Department of Agriculture provides for a complaint with the Inspector General. So that number is 1-800-424-9121. 800-424-9121. If you believe that you have been a victim of some of these ways of scamming, and then just really an unfair business practice that has put you at a disadvantage for actually successfully navigating through this application process. The application process is free. You do not need a lawyer. And as Mr. Bowman said, that organization and others have been procured by the government to provide you with that free technical assistance. And I think that's fantastic.
Online, there is on Facebook, it is Discrimination Financial Assistance Program. If you type that in, you can locate it. Any form of predatory actions that you experience, Linda, thank you for pointing that out. I can tell you there are farmers, ranchers, and landowners right now who are paying $100 a month and have been. There are people who've been told that this is a part of Pigford, which it is not. There are people who've been told this is a part of Black Farmer Settlement, which it is not. This is a completely new effort, not as a result of lawsuit. And if there's a foot stomper, do not pay 1 penny, not 1 penny, to get technical assistance.
So how long has the program been available? We're just, we wish we had met, Dr. Christensen, run into you earlier. And
this guy says, "Oh, I'll walk you to where you need to go." I'm asking the hotel people, how do I get to my Howard University medical graduate dinner? And this person says, I'll walk with you. I'm saying, I don't know about that, but found out why he wanted to walk with me so he could tell me about this program. So
we're grateful for that.
Yes,
everything is meant to be. There's no coincidences under the sun, because our small farmers are really providing a lot of our community produce. It's great when you go to your local food stores and you can say locally grown food. And we know that these are not big landowners. So we're talking not only farmers, we're talking landowners, and we're talking ranchers.
Right.
So we're talking all of the above. If you have been discriminated against, you have opportunity to be made whole in some way. With the 1 minute we have left, what would you want to say, Matt, to our audience?
I would say this, that Dr. Christensen and I walked hand in hand.
Not quite.
You're on mute. You're on
mute. Yeah, you went on mute.
On mute. There we go.
Dr. Christensen and I walk side by side, and it is our hope, it is our commitment, my personal commitment, to walk side by side with every farmer, rancher, and landowner. The same way I walk side by side with Dr. Christensen, my team will walk side by side with you. If for whatever reason you have any problems at all with anyone across the United States, please contact us. Our intention over the next 10 weeks is to reach as many people as possible. I thank you, Congresswoman Christensen, for your love for the citizens. Linda, I thank you, ma'am, because this was a great call.
Yes,
Wonderful.
sure.
And that website is www.22007/apply.gov.
www.22007apply.gov.
Apply.gov, no slash.
There's no
Okay,
slash.
I wear glasses.
Really
Well,
go
listen,
to the website. Just even if you just type in discrimination
and farms,
program,
it will come out. USDA.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah.
Well,
you'll
let's
see it.
check back in a couple of weeks to see how things are going, Matt, and let's get the word out even more. So this has been the Health, Wellness, and Lifestyle Program with Linda Dorman, Dr. Christensen, and our amazing guest, Mr. Matt Bowman, representing the USDA program for the Small Farmers and Discrimination Fund. Apply, meet your deadline, September 6th, October 31st, and get into the know by going onto the website.
Yeah. And you don't have to wait until September 6th.
You do not have to wait. Do
Get
it
your
now.
paperwork.
Do it now. Listen, have a great afternoon, and we thank you for all that you're doing, Matt, and we wish you tremendous success.
thank you.
As many as you can, and we will help you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank
Have
you,
a good
Carmen.
afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.